For the first time in my political lifetime, housing is going to be one of the top issues in this election because there's recognised to be a growing crisis of numbers and affordability, particularly in London and the South East. That's why the Liberal Democrats are saying that we've got to move towards building 300,000 new homes a year, which is a small amount compared to the amount that we were building regularly in the 50s and 60s. So it's perfectly doable. But the way we've got to do it, we've got to bring forward land in the first case. We've got to give local authorities more power to help doing that. We've got to create a whole raft of new garden cities and smaller garden communities outside London to give not just new houses, but all the infrastructure that goes with them, which any community is going to need. We've got to make affordable housing more available. So we've got to help housing associations to borrow more money and use it to build affordable housing. And we've got to give councils the option of borrowing so that they themselves can create more affordable housing. This is a particular problem in London. Housing for rent, whether affordable or not, is also a real challenge for all our children. And we've got to accept that housing for rent is an acceptable and growing area of the market, and make sure that both the finance is available for that and that the regulatory framework makes it easier for people to move into those properties. And finally, we've got to make sure that the taxation of housing is fairer by introducing a couple of higher rate council tax bands so that those on very expensive houses are paying a fairer proportion of the cost of running the system.
My name is Andrew Harding. I'm Managing Director of Qube, which is my own company, residential block management. The general election approaching is obviously causing us a degree of concern in terms of the high-end market. There's already been a degree of slowdown in the prime and super prime markets where my company operates. So it'd be interesting to see what happens with the general election. Our concern being, of course, if the Labour government come in, how they impose the mansion tax and any other punitive taxation methods which may affect the high-end market. It's all too easy to pick on the high-end market as being the land of oligarchs and so on. But the fact is that market provides a lot of employment for staff, for our concierge and our team members and other high-end managing agents. So we're concerned at the impact that will have. Obviously, we want to see improvements in the rental market so that young people can find longer-term homes. And we do like the idea, certainly of the Labour idea of 3-year tenancies, and that should hopefully, if it were to be implemented, open up that market for that age group. So interesting times ahead, but hopefully positive post-May general election for us.
You know, the politics of property really are, I think, the growing politics in this election. There was a time when I think there was a sense that we couldn't do much about it and it wasn't all that important. But, you know, certainly in London, and I suspect a lot more of the country, you can see how just having somewhere to live is really uppermost, not just in the minds of young people who are looking for a home, but their parents and, you know, their friends, all of whom see this as a really growing problem. What I thought was interesting about today was that we actually had a lot of consensus about what the problem is and some good ideas from all the political parties. I think what I'd be wary of is something that was strongly evident in this morning's discussion, which is the law of unintended consequences. Sometimes the most reasonable ideas can fail when you realise what the consequence of legislation is. Take, for example, the idea of licensing landlords. Everybody knows that there are some landlords who act appallingly to vulnerable people. There are people in parts of London who are housing other families in garden sheds with absolutely no sanitation, no heating, in appalling conditions. And that's not only illegal, but those landlords should be, you know, severely dealt with. But to apply a blanket landlord licensing means that thousands of decent landlords will pay quite unnecessary fees, which inevitably they pass on to tenants. Now, you know, explain to me why that's good for the decent tenant and the decent landlord. The vast majority of private renting, which is done with individuals rather than with property companies, is done on a perfectly decent consensual basis. Most people leave of their own accord, not because they get kicked out or because life is so intolerable. Things like the mansion tax, again, things like, development land tax, things like, empty homes taxes and empty property taxes. They all have this law of unintended consequences which runs through them. So be very careful what you do, because you've no idea, unless you're very, very, very sure what the outcome of what you do is likely to be.
One of the things that was raised by Peter Bill was our housing associations building affordable housing anymore. He referenced the fact that with our shared ownership product, it's really quite expensive. And that's true. It's very closely related to the market cost. What we do, though, is sell a portion of the home to the first-time buyer, and a portion of the home continues to be owned by the housing association. So there's quite a low rent to be paid on that, and the Mayor and the London boroughs are trying to keep down the affordability of this product through the lower rents and smaller shares. So Notting Hill and other providers in London are creating shared ownership housing, which we are selling to people who are earning under about 60,000 a year. And it is a group that needs help. It's not easy for people who are earning, maybe a couple who are earning about 30 grand each, to find market solutions to their housing needs, whether it's buying outright or renting on the open market. So that's my defence, really, of doing shared ownership, and it is producing a great solution for lots of people. Lots of people are queuing up to buy this product because there are so few other options available for young people starting out on their housing career in London.
Hi, my name's James Crawley from a company called Trinity Estates. Very fortunate to have attended today's event. It's the first time I've attended, and I found it absolutely fascinating. The quality of the speakers was superb, and the debates that were discussed at some detail were prevalent to all industries and to all of the guests that actually attended the event. From my own personal point of view, obviously planning was discussed, and I changed my viewpoint halfway through in relation to where I would vote in relation to what party, simply based on their individual arguments. As a property management company, we look to developers and we look for what's going to help our company and obviously work with our clients. So today's been an absolutely valuable part of an exercise, and I'd just like to say thank you very much for letting us attend.
I think it was great today that we had this debate. Housing is something which is at the top of the political agenda. In some ways, I suppose that is a reflection of the crisis that we find ourselves in. And the key thing from the British Property Federation's perspective has been to articulate both that we have solutions to some of the issues that will face the next government, but also see the challenges ahead, whether that be on things like mansion tax, planning, the role of the private rented sector, how the community infrastructure levy works, and we are there to champion the sector's cause in that respect.
I think it's fairly clear from today that there's very little difference between the three parties in terms of their views on the commercial market and especially the residential market. They don't seem to have any ideological differences at all anymore. I think in terms of voting, I just vote for who you like to vote for. Leave it at that.